I talked about there was an explosion here in the valley below me at a well site. We complained about vapors we had complained about the odors from the hydrocarbon vapors for months, but then the odors got very, very unbearable, and I started making more frequent calls to the DEP. They started claiming that they were going to bring an air quality monitoring lab from Harrisburg out to sample air, which never came to fruition. And then the 1 week, the odors got so bad that there was an actual explosion. My personal belief, and from what my observation was, is that vapors had accumulated in the valley overnight. There was an inversion. You could see the fog laying in the valley that night. The next morning, about 8 o'clock, it was a nice, bright, sunny day. It started warming up, and they were flaring a well off, and actually only had like a 20-foot stack on the flare, which was unusual because they usually have them higher in the air. But my personal belief is that the flare just touched off the vapors that had accumulated in the valley overnight. It was like a flash explosion, like if you threw gasoline on a bonfire type effect. They said a frac tank exploded, but yet there was no evidence of any damage to the frac tank, which I find hard to believe that it exploded. And as a result, the frac ponds caught fire because there were so many heavy hydrocarbons floating on the water surface in the frac ponds that it melted all the liners. So all of that valley's been contaminated with frac water. And I get sick and tired of hearing these guys saying that water's clean, you could drink it. That's what these guys all claim. I'd like to see them drink it because it's full of, especially light end hydrocarbons. I'm certain of it. And I have evidence. I took a photograph. I called the DEP. 2 weeks after that explosion, the smells were still horrendous. I called the DEP a couple times to complain. Then one day I looked down over the hill here and I realized where the smells were coming from. I came home from work. It was a nice sunny afternoon. I told my wife, I said, boy, the smell's not too bad today. She goes, it was bad earlier, but it's died down. Then I saw a pickup truck pull up to the site. I saw him start up a tractor with a PTO pump on it. There was one pipe going to the frac pond, and all of a sudden all kinds of water started flowing out of the pipe into the frac pond. So there was nothing at the site but 2 frac ponds, a well, 2 condensate tanks, a pickup truck, and a tractor with a pump. What they were doing was they were pumping the condensate water out of those tanks into the frac ponds and using the frac ponds to aerate off the hydrocarbons versus having the condensate water hauled off. They were trying to get away without having to pay to get the condensate water hauled off site. So what they've been doing for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, but I didn't see it because I was never home from work early enough, is they were pumping those tanks into the frac ponds, which the DEP told me wasn't a permissible thing to be doing, but I doubt anything ever happened over it. But that's where I'm certain the strong odors that we were getting were coming from, because as soon as the guy started pumping water into the frac pond, I could barely breathe. Within 30 seconds, those odors came up over this hill to the house. I could barely breathe. It about knocked me out. And it was all those light end hydrocarbons in that condensate water. And here I am breathing it for several months, and that doesn't bother me as much as the fact that my children were breathing it for several months. But to try to prove that or show that there's been some sort of damage from that, it's not doable. So that frustrates me. That there again, it just comes back to these guys need some regulation, so they can't be doing this type of thing, especially doing it next to somebody's home. You're mixing industry, it's a conflict of land use interest. You've got industry in the middle of communities, residential people, where people live, their homes, their dreams, everything's being impacted by that. And there again, the guys that are making a lot of money or have the potential to make a lot of money, it doesn't seem to bother them as much. But the people that have smaller acreage and, maybe have nicer homes because they don't live and work in the community, it's ruining their homes. And I don't know how people feel about it, except for the meetings that I've gone to where it's about, of course, most of the people that show up to meetings are there to complain. But there's also a few people that show up and say, what's wrong with you people? This is a good thing because of the economy, the economic impacts it's having, which I'm not sure that I see any economic impacts directly in this community yet, except for maybe a few guys that have gotten some royalty checks. But most of the workers are all out of state. Yeah, they come into town, spend money at the local stores and what have you. But there again, those local stores, they're not local. They're all big box companies. That money's not staying in this community,
Have you noticed any increases in crime rates in the area with the influx of people coming in? Or maybe
that's another thing
crimes?
that really bothers me. With this site that's immediately next to us, it's totally exposed my property. There's guys down there, I don't know who they are. I don't know where they're from. They know exactly what I have up here. They know exactly what vehicles I have, when I'm home, when I'm not home. Fortunately, nothing's been lifted from my place yet. Although there was a kid pulled up here in a pickup truck one day that I didn't know, and it was at an odd time in the day. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and it just so happened I was still home taking care of some business. I'm normally gone by then. And as soon as he saw me, he backed down my driveway faster than I could have backed down my driveway. So I just wondered what he was doing up here. And he looked like a roughneck type. I don't know. But I have heard of vandalism. I talked to a woman whose husband's a state cop, and she was indicating to me that they've had numerous problems throughout their area. And I just personally haven't been impacted yet, but I have heard, yes, that there's problems with vandalism and what have you. The other problem is just the safety on the roads. I travel some back roads around here to work every day, and my wife takes the kids to school on some of these same back roads, not daily, but frequently. And most of the time you get run off the road or have to stop to let 4, 5, 6 frac trucks pass. And if you don't stop, they basically will run you off the road. Now, my understanding is that they're getting a better handle on that as far as from the municipal level, working with the companies. There's been enough complaints of these guys just flying down these back roads and running people off roads that now I guess the Range Resources and some of the other bigger companies in the area are starting to actually follow up on chasing down the problem. If you report somebody ran you off the road, they'll actually try to find out who it was and whatever punishment or whatever. But actually, over the last month or so, it's been a little better as far as these trucks, the way they're handling themselves on these roads. But our driveway exits on a state road, and there's mornings where there's 30, 40 triaxles coming down the road full of gravel to go develop, put in for roads into these well sites. And by no means are they following the speed limit. And if you were be unlucky enough to pull out in front of one, you'd be gone instantly. But, and that's not to say there's no other truck traffic, but it's just a lot more heavy traffic than there ever used to be out in this area, by far. At least double, if not triple, the truck traffic that there used to be. So yeah, that's a concern for me, the safety factor of these guys being on the road all the time. And like I said, the vandalism, the fact that I'm being watched all the time bothers me. We had our privacy here for years, for 15 years, or 13 years, 14 years. Now, I'll come home and I'll be working down around back here, and I'll see some guy sitting there leaning against a pickup truck watching me because he has nothing better to do. And maybe if you live in town, that's not a big deal, but I'm not used to that. I'm not used to people watching me.